As Aine said, I'm the Higher Executive Officer in the Jobs Plus section, which is part of Employment Support Services within the Department of Social Protection, and we're based in Carrick-on-Shannon in County Leitrim. So the Jobs Plus scheme was launched by the Minister for Social Protection on the 8th of July, and it covered all jobs created on or after the 1st of July of this year. The Department ran a scheme called the Employer Job PRSI Incentive Scheme in conjunction with the Revenue Job Assist Scheme administered by the Revenue Commissioners prior to July. So we had two separate but related schemes, and they were heavily criticised for being complicated. They placed an administrative burden on employers, and there was consequences of that being a low take-up. So through consideration of all these criticisms, a new scheme called the Jobs Plus Incentive was launched. The Action Plan for Jobs, which is the government's rationale and initiative to try and deal with the burden of unemployment, outlined 7 disruptive reforms, and these were measures with highly ambitious deadlines supported by senior industry partners, and they were some of the people involved in the development of the Jobs Plus. So the purpose of the incentive is to incentivise all employers to hire employees from the live register, and particularly those who are long-term unemployed. The payment of the Jobs Plus incentive is set at 2 levels, and it's biased in favour of the more long-term unemployed. So if you recruit somebody who has been unemployed for between 12 and 24 months, you could possibly be entitled to a payment of €7,500. If you recruit somebody who's been on the live register for over 2 years, the payment is €10,000. The payment is made monthly in arrears over a 2-year period, so long as the employee is retained. With regards to comparing it to the old schemes, you can see the benefits of the Jobs Plus there in that it's a certainty of benefit, it's immediate, it's a tangible benefit, and then with regard to the administrative burden, the Jobs Plus is all dealt with online, so the employer applies online to check their eligibility, the employee applies online to check their eligibility, and for the employers the communication is all issued online. You also have pre-verification, so you can actually have your employee check their eligibility prior to taking them on. I mean, would have had scenarios under the old scheme where an employer takes somebody on, this person has guaranteed them they've been the required length on the live register, but they may or may not have been on an eligible scheme. So in this scenario, if it's the pre-verification, then you have a letter in front of you from your employee to say yes, they are eligible, and the letter also tells you whether it's the €7,500 or the €10,000. The consistent conditions of the scheme, there's no limit on the number of employees, and under this new scheme you can take somebody on as a consequence of natural turnover. The old schemes you had to create new and additional jobs. So where an employee retires or just leaves, you can fill that vacancy and still qualify for the Jobs Plus incentive. Some conditions of the job: it must be a full-time job, at least 30 hours work per week and spanning at least 4 days. The purpose of this is to reduce the numbers on the live register, so if somebody is working 4 days, then they're no longer available to sign. The employer must be compliant with Irish tax and employment laws, so the employer is required to have a valid tax clearance cert when applying for eligibility. The eligible job must not displace another employee, so you can't just let somebody go to take somebody on who will qualify. Then the recruits must have been unemployed for a period of at least 12 months. There's no limit on the number of people you can take on under this scheme, and it's available to employers filling new vacancies as a consequence of natural turnover. So the steps involved: the employer is looking to recruit a new employee. They go to www.jobsplusie and register. This is just a copy of what you'll be asked to fill in. Now it's kind of a bit difficult to see there. So you'll be asked to give the information: your company name, your company registration number, your address, a contact telephone and email. And then the information just on your company, what your current workforce and your sector of employment are. The payment details that you require the payment to be lodged into the account, and then permission for the department to check that you are actually tax compliant. You provide your tax clearance cert number there. So you'll get an email from us in the Jobs Plus section to tell you that you're eligible. You then identify your candidates, so you can advertise your job as normal. We recommend that you contact your local employment support office or advertise your vacancy on jobsireland.ie. You short list your candidates, and then you get your candidate to check their eligibility on jobsplus.ie. Eligible candidates will receive a confirmation letter telling them they're eligible, the level of payment they're entitled to, and they'll also have a form called a JP1 to complete. They sign this form at Part A, and they ask you to fill in the form at Part B, and they ask you to sign and stamp it and return it to us. When they're checking their eligibility, that's the information they need to provide: their public services number, their name and address, their date of birth, their email address, what sector of employment they have been in prior to becoming unemployed, and then details of their sign-in history, whether or not they did any other courses like TOOS or Rural Social Scheme short course courses, and about changes in their circumstances. They also tell us, and it's mainly so as we can speed up applicants who have been told by an employer to check their eligibility, because we have people just checking their eligibility just to see whether or not they're eligible. So if you've been told by an employer to check, you're a more urgent case, so we just look at that. But we're pretty much up to date in the section, so there isn't really any huge backlogs, regardless of whether they've been told to apply or not. So this then is the JP1. You can see there it says that I confirm my eligibility under Jobs Plus, how much the level of the grant is, the 7.5 or the 10,000, and they sign that probably in your presence as the employer. Then you fill in the rest of the information, which just asks whether or not a relationship exists between the employee and the employer, as people are not eligible under this who are related to the employer. What the current workforce of the company is, if the job represents an increase in the workforce, and if it doesn't, what the reason for that is. Then the average number of weekly hours you expect the employee to work at the proposed annual salary. Some of this information is just statistical for the department. Then you tell us the proposed start date of the employee and what occupation category they'll be working under, and the employer signs and stamps that form. When that form comes back to us, then we will link the employer and the employee, a key in the details, and the file will go to accounts for payment, and you can take your candidate on. So once the start date is agreed, your employee must close a job seeker's claim, as no payment on this incentive will be paid to an employer until the department is satisfied that the claim has been closed. And a month in arrears, you will receive your payment into the proposed bank account, and it will be paid over a 2-year period whilst the employee remains in your employment. So the bottom line really on this is to say what it actually means. So if you employ somebody who's been between 1 and 2 years on the Live Register, you'll have €312.50 a month lodged to your account. And if you employ somebody long term who's been over 2 years on the Live Register, you'll be getting €416.66 into your account on a monthly basis. With regards to service to the employers, employers can employ eligible interns direct from JobBridge to full-time employment and still qualify for this. So as Áine said, the JobBridge, you can have somebody for 9 months. Over that time you've developed a relationship with them, and you can know then whether they're going to be a good employee or not, and then take them on if they're successful under this and have a grant paid. You can also employ candidates who have been on work experience and on momentum straight into the Jobs Plus incentive. So at least you know the kind of people you're taking on if you've used the facilities provided by the Department of Life. Again, this slide now is actually slightly out of date, but at the moment we have that has actually increased to 1,400 applications from employers, with 1,320 eligible and 80 where we're just requiring tax clearance certs to be provided. We have 2,500 applications from employees at the moment, and at the moment we have 235 employers receiving payment of the grant in respect of new jobs created, and but that number is expected to increase to over 400 this month, where the payments will issue to the accounts on the 25th of October. With regard to Monaghan, 29 employers have been deemed eligible from the Monaghan area. So that's basically my presentation. If you have any questions, I can take them now. The employment support services are provided here in Monaghan, in the plantation, and you can contact Sharon Curran, Anne Morgan or Tony McAvinny for support and information under the Jobs Bus, and also in the Dundalk office, Elizabeth Butterly and Stephen Hanna are officers there who provide information. And you can also contact me in the Employment Support Service in Carrick-on-Shannon if I can be assistance to any of you. Okay. Thank you.